Hey, sister. All right, coordinate. Hi, Miss Molly.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. You guys another one.
So
This is Sonia.
I
Yes.
think quite a long time ago, right? Halloween or something?
Yes,
yeah.
Halloween. Yes.
Hi, Jack. Hi. All right.
Hey, I brought jeans with me in case I thought it'd be cold.
I brought shorts with me in case I thought it was warm enough.
Opposites. We're not related. Not at all. How was your workout?
It was good. It's leg day, which is always the tough day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not usually my favorite day.
Yeah, I don't really like leg day either.
No, I don't think most people do.
My arms are so much stronger than my legs.
Legs, it's just because it's hard and it's the bigger muscle group. And everybody feels that way. Let's see. It's the end of season 2, and as I was thinking about a way to wrap this up, I thought I'd love to have someone help me unpack my big story over this season. But as soon as I had that thought, I knew exactly who I needed to talk to. My sister. So that's what we're doing. And like all the episodes in season 2, this is an adventure. So Katie and I are taking a local day-long adventure, stopping at a few places as we talk about these big stories. And you get to know my sister and peek into her world too. Now about my sister, she's an expert on Christopher Swan, and she's going to help me put my big story in context as we dig into the show and as we look ahead. Yeah, looks like no one's home.
Do you have a key?
Actually, I don't think my key works anymore.
Okay, they have a key in a really strange place. It might take us a few minutes, but let's go grab it.
Okay. Wait, but you do know where it's at?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Nancy Drew, let's go. We have snuck into our parents' home while they're on a little holiday. Because that's what we do. It was close by, it was quiet, it's cool because it's very hot today. And so we're sitting in their living room while they don't know about it.
Yeah.
I think that's fun. Here's the other thing people don't know about us. Mostly they don't. That we don't refer to each other by name.
Yeah, we've never have. Really.
We only call each other sister and brother, which makes us seem like it's a weird sort of cult. Doesn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But I like that. So this is the last episode of season 2. And I've been saying this for the last few weeks. I'm so excited that we're done. I mean, I feel sad as well because it's been a really fun adventure. It's been really different, and I've been so excited about what I was doing this season. But I'm also really excited to, put a bow on it and get into a little bit of a break and then do season 3, which will be a little bit different. And so I thought it would be really fun to wrap it up with you because my sister has a different perspective than I do on kind of what I'm doing. And I thought this was a great opportunity to get to know you a little bit for the audience and then talk a little bit about this season and maybe some surprises in it or things that happened, maybe my story. So I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
So tell me in a nutshell, like, what is it that you do in your world, in your career? Like, what is it that you do overall?
I offer support, education, and advocacy to many people in many walks of life. The current position I work in, I support family, friends, caregivers, and allies who have a loved one with a mental health or substance use challenge. So we do a lot of support, education about mental health and different systems and system navigation to connect people to resources and understanding how systems work and to teach people to advocate for their loved ones.
And so when you say support, what does support mean?
I think part of that is witnessing somebody through their challenge and offering support and guidance, with some education and understanding with somebody who's had some similar experiences.
So that could be like support groups. That could be...
Yeah, it could be support groups. It could be one-on-one meetings where we sit down and kind of problem solve and talk out what's going on, connecting to other service providers, things like that.
Okay. And your background has been in mental health for a really long time, and you've had different kind of advocacy experiences and roles, right?
Yeah, I kind of started out of the gate not knowing what I wanted to do, but I started working in group homes and moved forward with different advocacy and working in different mental health nonprofits or systems.
How did you transition from having your own experiences to now becoming this advocacy spokesperson, connector, community builder? How did you transition from your own space to realizing that you could help others?
I think it was a slow process. I wanted to help others, but I didn't really know how to do that in the beginning. And so I just kind of showed up to people that needed some support. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I can do that one thing. It's little. And I slowly kind of chipped away at it. And over time kind of built a pathway for myself.
So it was like doing just this small thing one at a time as like the opportunity showed up?
Yeah. Or I had, one, like mom would always say, one door closes, another one opens. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it didn't work, and then something else would come up and I would go down that path, and it would, one thing at a time.
And was that showing you some proof too, like when something would happen and you're like, oh, that worked? Actually, gosh, like it was affirmation that, oh, I actually know what I'm talking about. I realized like the things I've experienced is working.
I think that was even a slow process. I think I just kind of figured, oh, well, I could do that one thing. Okay, that worked. And now I know how to do it. So I can do probably one more thing. And I think it's over time and more recently, I've kind of realized that it's actually possible and that there's change that humans can make change even in a small way.
Do you see that even within like people you're working with or people that you're helping?
Yeah, of course. They're part of the, they share more of that. I think I learn change from the people I get to work with. I think it's an honor to be able to show up and be human with somebody. Well,
here's the thing I've always thought about working in mental health and the world of it as much as I know, is it seems super stressful. It just, obviously I'm your brother, so I've seen it firsthand with some of the things you're going through as well, right. But it also seems really hard to be in that world and to see people not receive the help they need or not the right kind of help. First of all, is that a fair statement to say it is a tough space to be in sometimes?
Sometimes. I wouldn't say that's true all the time. I think that there's a lot of beautiful things that happen. And as a culture, we look at the big things and not the little things. And there's a lot of beauty in the little things that actually create the bigger things.
What do you mean by that? Like that we, as a culture, we look at the big things?
Well, just the idea of having getting a good job and then getting married and having kids and then being able to support yourself and have 3 cars and a boat or whatever.
Like big milestones.
Yeah,
stuff?
Big milestones. And we actually miss the little things of when somebody got to see somebody in a different light, or somebody got 2 people that wouldn't typically talk, had a conversation and became friends, or, having different experiences. Those all add up to the bigger things.
Yeah, I get that. I think that's almost like anything in life, right? It's all the experiences that we're having, all the small things that we can be have gratitude for.
Right.
And also it's not just if we're just living for the big milestones, we're missing out.
Yeah. Well, and then, in my own bubble, I wouldn't be able to figure out what my big milestones are if I didn't have the little pebbles to go along with it.
Why do it?
It started with my own lived mental health experience from a young kid and then supporting family. And over time, I realized that for myself, there was a lot of barriers to learning how to work the different systems, the healthcare system, the mental health system, and so on. And I needed people to guide me, and there was no person to guide me through that. And similar for our family. And so with that, I wanted to move forward and support the community in the way that I was looking for. Because, I felt so alone, and my story felt like there wasn't anybody else in that. And that wasn't actually the case. And so moving forward with supporting others in the community and trying to better the system.
Katie, where are we?
We're at the Handline restaurant in Sebastopol.
And we're sitting outside in their expanded, cool, urban garden patio thing. I think through the eyes of you, because I'm just curious, like, okay, you knew what I used to do before all this, right? I worked at the Walt Disney Company, I worked at all these different places, I was in communications, blah, blah, blah. But, like, what's been your thought about me taking this thing on and, like, where it's at today?
I think it's just been a fun journey to watch. I mean, because ever since you worked years ago at, like, the Disney store, you were always, I remember...
Wait a minute. I'm having flashbacks of my turquoise blue sweater.
And your see-through clear bag.
Oh, yes.
The netted bag.
The netted bag, to make sure I wasn't stealing any Mickeys.
Yeah. But I remember sitting in your room at one point, and you were making game boards for communication staff meetings or something.
That's right.
And at that point, I was like, oh, he's good with people, right? And you've always been somebody I've looked up to. And so it's been fun to watch you grow in different ways, like corporate-wise, and then switch this to the podcast and kind of creating your own space. But it's all kind of resonated with the community piece, but it's just fun to watch you kind of step into your own more and more, that it's self-led and it's your journey, essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch.
From turquoise sweater to game board. Hey, that game boards, that was the same time I think I was making Play-Doh, like homemade Play-Doh Mickey ornaments for the staff as well.
Yes, I remember that too.
Yeah. I do it all. I do it all here.
Crafter.
I am. I still have some of those.
I've been even in your journey and where you've lived and moved has kind of expanded to this bigger community piece too, because you've gone to different places where you, like Burbank for different interviews, or LA, and then locally in your own community. And
I mean, like, even like, you mean regarding to the interviews, or do you mean just like where I lived?
So where you lived, and then you went back to those communities and done your podcast there. And so it's like your community just continues to expand, just the way you look at it.
It's interesting that you bring it up that way. Is I feel like I can look at the community differently by going there and interviewing people. So, like, in season 2, I go back to LA, and I've done that a couple times, right? Throughout the life of the show, but to interview Suzanne Wong, this, Hollywood actress and comedian. But, like, I lived in a Hollywood life. Like, I mean, I wasn't like an actor, but I worked for an entertainment company, and I have a lot of actor friends. And it was funny to go back to that and talk to somebody from, like, because I wear my hat in the wine country, and, and this whole kind of smaller town community feel, and they go back into the Hollywood as a different kind of participant, someone that doesn't live there. It just felt really a different lens to have on it. But also an appreciation for what they're doing, because I know what kind of work that is.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time when we're in community, especially our own, we don't see what's there. And then when we take a step back, we can see it and have a different respect for it.
That's so funny, because that's actually what I thought about in the first interview I did this season with Mandy. I think I even opened the show when I said, wait, this woman is changing, like, a really big part of the world. And it's happening literally in my town. And I was like, in my small little town, which I refer to it as. And the truth is, Petaluma is 50,000 people. So it's not a small little town.
Right.
But it feels that way.
It feels that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I realized out of that is that there's more happening in our communities than we know. We just need to look deeper or get involved. And that showed that to me. And I also interviewed Ramin from Petaluma as well, and just to see that Ramin's the gentleman that created the book app, right? Bookle, but he also does all these other things. He's an award-winning photographer,
right?
And really well connected. And when you start to meet these people, you start to realize your community is bigger and different than you thought it was. Because I think our community, we think of it as only what we see it as.
Right.
But once we're open enough to expand and learn from others, we realize, well, it actually is so much more.
Well, talking about the same thing, right? Like we've kind of briefly talked about how I started and kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I'm curious to you, going back to the first episode to now, you had an idea when you first started, and I'm curious how that journey has changed and for your story, along with the other guests that you've had, what that looks like.
So the original concept of this was start a show where I talk to people that are kind of in the know of what they wanted to be in the world. And I could help people that didn't know that. And we could find inspiration in unexpected places. So that last part's still true. But as time went on, I realized that that felt career focused. And as much as career did matter to me, it's not everything. So through some iterations over, a couple years to where we're at today, I'll skip that middle section, but where we're at today, I moved through these iterations to come up with, it's more than career. It's more about who these people are and what they're doing that celebrates who they are and doing what they love and creating, I want to say a life they love, but also really creating change. And here's what I mean by that. My philosophy is really around, I want to celebrate things that make people different. And I want to do that because the more we do that, the more we'll create a world where we all belong. And that's how, I think my mission is really kind of created today. So with going through these different guests over many times, it's almost 80 guests or so, something like that. I really started to focus on telling the bigger stories that were focused on beliefs and people standing up for rights, things that they believed in, and following a passion and a purpose no matter what other people thought. So I started to realize that was really around diverse topics and people. That's why if you look at my guest list, it is not one person. I mean, the demographic is all over the map and it feels a little maybe randomly vague, but it's not actually, because everybody has these great stories and it's voices what we might not be hearing. And so I realized by speaking to people that were diverse and I was inclusive, then we would hear how we could celebrate these differences and what these differences were. So I think that with this season, especially, I really wanted to look at that further, and I wanted to push things that I didn't understand well, and I wanted to get into their world physically. I wanted to be part of that world and see what that was like so I can understand it. So maybe that wasn't the short version, but that was the answer.
Good answer.
Okay. What stood out for you that you thought, gosh, this is really what we need more of. We need to hear this kind of story, and because this is bringing reality and truth and inspiration.
Well, I think there was definitely a few episodes that I really connected with personally. Your first episode,
Mandy,
and listening to her path and how she found community in a place that she didn't expect it. Because when she was sharing that she was going to start to transition while working as a prison guard, right?
Guard, yeah.
Yeah. That she was really worried about being in the cell block that she was working in. And I think there was 100 people in custody there at the time. And they actually ended up being somewhat of the protector of her. And so just the expecting of the unexpected community support and how other the areas where you think you're going to be supported sometimes isn't actually the truth of that. And so I think her story was just it was her truth and the experience she gets to have that she's having moving forward and the advocacy she's trying to do there. I mean, that's one story that I've shared in my own work because I do a lot of LGBTQ plus advocacy and trying to just have the conversation with people that we all work and live with different lenses on, And sometimes we don't know somebody else's struggle. And what we think should be simple might actually not be simple. And that was a really great story of showing change and showing up to your truth and being human and actually seeing that there's unexpected community.
Mm-hmm. I like this unexpected thought because I think, I won't speak for everybody, I'll speak for myself. Something I've learned over time is that the things that we expect to happen, whatever it is, that's just our expectation. And that could be built up because of different things that have happened, our experiences, the things that we're thinking about. But the truth is, we don't know what's affecting those things in front of us. So if I expect this one group to support me and this other group not to, but
Right.
I actually, I'm not a fortune teller. And, I don't know these people, each individual. So I can't speak for them. I'm just like projecting. And what I've learned over time is we really got to try to stay as open as possible to like let the cards fall where they are, I guess,
Right,
and
right.
just let people approach you. I think it's just hard to do that when you're in a vulnerable place.
Well, right. Because, even for any of us, whatever we're going through, it's hard to see the outside of it when you're in the middle of it, right? It's when you step back and kind of look back at what took place is when you can really see those kind of beautiful pieces come to play. But in the moment, at least in my own life, there's been like, oh, that happened. And then stepping back, I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty magical, but not seeing that in that moment because I was pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then I just think Bruce's story was also pretty...
Bruce Sturchell?
Yeah, it was pretty powerful in the fact of, this has kind of been his journey of creating his company. But he talked about how it was like 18 years in the making. And we all start out with a reason. And he started out, it sounded like being a little bit angry about not being able to find a tire that he wanted to wear or having, he didn't want to wear a jogging suit or a Hawaiian shirt, as he said,
Right. Those are the only two options.
Right. And so him starting out being kind of angry about different clothing lines or whatnot, and then kind of growing over time, but he didn't really know where he was going when he started. And I think that's part of the beauty, just as I've watched you grow through that with your journey as well.
Well, hearing stories like Bruce, I think is it's almost like affirmation. It helps build confidence to say that this journey that you're on, that it's going to be different than you think it is. It's going to take longer than you think it is. We're both not always so great to hear that.
Right.
I can tell you the reality of that as well is true. Like, oh, this is totally different than I thought it was going to be, as well as, wait, why is this not like all perfect yet?
Right.
Right. I have all these hopes and dreams and things to work out. And when you hear that, even though I'm like, oh my gosh, how long did it take you? That can feel frustrating.
Right.
But it also gives me faith and hope that I'm not the only one. And I feel super solid about like where I'm at and the story I'm trying to tell and the voices we're trying to lift up. That feels like some of the most important work I've ever done in my life, really, or the most important work, because I feel like it's really making real change. And now that I have this kind of like, oh, Bruce is doing this thing, and Bruce is pushing boundaries.
Right.
Like, he's talking about body positivity with men, which is a totally different aspect and not as well known. And he's trying to find acceptance in this world, especially in the Western culture of like, skinny's better and we all have plastic surgery, blah, blah, blah. And I think if he can do that, like, and look how successful, I really kind of don't love that word, but look at how well he's living that life he wants, then I can do it too.
Right. And he's also bridging into other communities to offer support and what your one goal starts out to be actually can expand and be something really...
Sure. Well, if we stuck with one little thing, then, I don't know, we're not learning and growing, which is the opposite of what I think we should be doing.
Right. But sometimes it's hard to envision that when you start out with this tiny goal that you actually, it's your dream. It's a thing that you've been set your sights on. And then you get there, and then sometimes it's like, oh, and then it expands in its own way, because we always need a starting point. But I think it's sometimes it's very unexpected.
Yeah, because I think we're too narrow when we're thinking about when we call it like I have this one dream. Well, yeah, okay, depends how vague you're going to be with that.
Right.
Like it's different if you're an actor, or musician, or something. Like I have a dream about it being a musician. Okay, get it. But when we're narrow in our focus initially, that dream may actually be just an idea of it. And I think when I started this show, it wasn't a dream. The dream was bigger.
Right.
You know, because I actually have these aspirations of bringing all this change and doing all these great things. And I want to tell these stories in new ways. I actually want to expand to a web series. I want to bring on more shows to the Accidental Information Network that I'm not hosting. And I want to do these different things. But it's all part of that bigger mission. But I realized I wanted to do some of that, but I didn't really know what the connector, all the focus was,
right?
Because it kept shifting a little bit for me, you know. And I'm like, oh, not that word, this word, this word. So I think the lesson we get out of that is, you know, you just keep pushing, you keep driving, you can't overthink it. You know, just keep doing, and the part of the why will catch up.
Right.
Like you got to know your kind of core why, but how it translates into an actual official dream, that will catch up as you just keep doing the things that you want to do.
That's a lot of my statements. You can do the best with what you have, and then when you don't know what you need, then you reach out and look for what else is there, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that's the hardest part, is letting go of the expectation, because we set ourselves up to have, you know, want to be successful and have all these plans, and then when our expectation doesn't meet the kind of the path we're on, we have to let go of that, and sometimes the door opens for us to go down this path, but it's challenging to let it go.
Yeah, especially because I think this path we're on, we think the expectation is like that we know what the path is.
Right.
But the truth is that if we're so set on that path, then we have blinders on, and we can't see the opportunities. Yeah. I wrote something about this that just happened, like with Indianapolis, right? I told you, like, oh yeah, and now that I'm going to go the following week, you know, because the trip got postponed,
right?
I'm now finding myself in the middle of participating in Indie Gay Pride.
Right.
I've never watched a gay pride parade in my life, and I wrote a post about this on Instagram, because I said if I didn't say yes to that, then I would have missed out on the opportunity of seeing what their community was like.
Right.
Even though Indianapolis is big, it's still much smaller than my purview of San Francisco and LA. And so when you're in some of these smaller spaces, it's just brave just to even show up to those events.
Right.
Where, you know, San Francisco would be like, duh, there's 1 million people here and everybody's, you know, got something.
Right.
And it was, I felt like it was, the community was so supportive. It was like tangible. Mm-hmm. It was different than what I've seen before. LA was like a lot of like, it's about the party and the drinking and the whatever. And that's great when you're 20, but this was really different. Mm-hmm. You know, so I just looked at it, I was like, I'm glad I said yes to that.
Right.
I wouldn't have expected what this was going to be like.
Right.
So I have this framed kind of art because it's a print, but it's this piece of art that sits above my desk in my home office that says, think of it as an adventure. Mm-hmm. And I bought that purposely because I was like, that helps me think of everything I do as an adventure, even the crappy things that happen. You know, like, that's just an adventure. Life is an adventure.
Definitely.
And if you can start to love adventure, then it's fun. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's how I start to try to be more daring when I'm like, I'm just going to get on a plane. I'm going to do this thing. And because sometimes I book my travel really late and I'm like, I'm just going to make it happen. Let's go. Or I squeeze things in. Oh, I got me an hour. I can probably do this, you know, like.
Right.
So I think if people start doing that in their life every day, and that's what I try to do, it can change your mind. It can shift the way that you perceive the world or perceive your life. Because here's the truth. # living my best life on Instagram, I'm calling BS on that. I know people like to use a hashtag all the time, but BS, because guess what? Your best life is your best life. It's just what you make it. You don't have to have fancy cars. You don't have to have all these extravagant things, and that's what most people use a hashtag for.
Right.
I think if you just look at life as this wonderful adventure and you're just doing the things that you love, hashtag do what you love, then it is living your best life. And you don't have to like aim for these other like tangible, consumable things. It's about, life is really only about experiences and people. That's the way I see it. And if you don't focus on those two things, you're not living your best life.
It's funny too that you bring up the adventure piece, because I really feel like that was like a big piece of my childhood growing up with you as my brother, is that you were kind of my gateway to adventure.
Gateway to adventure.
Gateway.
Makes me sound like a drug.
A little bit.
Gateway drug.
And maybe so. No. But the piece of exploring, going to the beach or going to the city for the first time, or exposing me to gay culture, which then ended up being my part of my community. Mm-hmm. But you were kind of my pathway to adventure and knowing something different than which I lived, and building, helping build my community.
Well, I'm glad to know that. I also think that's really important for all of us to do for other people.
Right.
Help expose them.
And I think, I mean, you and I have both run down that path, just in different ways, parallel.
Yeah.
You know, when we both, I think, that's the core of who we are and how we engage in the world and what our kind of hopes and dreams are.
On our day of adventure, my sister and I also went to the beach. No, there's no actual audio of that. Well, because beaches can be crazy windy and my microphones could not handle it. But you know how it works. There's an ocean, there's birds, and sand. But also, while we were there, and as Katie would describe as totally predictable, I surprised her with a prop and an ask to do a mini photo shoot. It's totally true. I'm always looking for ways to create memories and pictures, even if my sister does not love that. So a bunch of those photos are on the webpage for this episode at mybigstory.show. Okay, now back to the beach. Well, I don't want to overstate it, but the beach is a perfect place to leave this season. Over the course of this last year, this show has become a bigger part of my story and my life. Halfway through it, I even started to see an unexpected meaning for myself. What if I could use the show to build momentum for good, to show people how to use their power for good? I often say that inspiration is everywhere. You just have to look for it. Just like on the beach with my photo shoot. And as much as I expected my listeners to find it in my show, I found it as well. Listen, this is only one stop on the journey. There are other stories to tell and other ways to tell them. So make sure you're subscribed to the show, you're following me on all the socials at Oh Hi Christopher, and you're getting the newsletter over at christopherswan.info, because listen, big things are coming. But for now, why don't you go take your story outside with your sister or brother, your partner, your friend, whoever, and go have experiences. The more you explore and do, the more you'll be inspired to create your big story every day. Thank you for being on the show, sister.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is fun. And now we're going to sneak out of our parents' house, and they'll never know we were here unless they listen to the episode.
True.